outcome. You told you should have moved it.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, we are live.
All right, great, thank you. Good evening and welcome, everyone. It is 7:01 p.m. and I now call to order the 2110th regular meeting of the City of College Place City Council. Will the clerk please take roll call?
Mayor Hernandez,
Present.
Councilmember Jessup,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Espinoza,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Sherman. Present. Councilmember Boyle. Present. And Councilmember Williams has asked to be excused. We do have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. It's now time for the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now time for the public comment. Jerry, did anyone submit a comment in advance?
I did not receive any comments.
Okay, great. And is there anyone online and virtual attendance that would like to speak?
There are 2 people in the attendees list.
Okay, if any of the attendants would like to speak at this time, please raise your hand, and *9 is used to raise your hand if you're on by phone. None? Okay. Great, thank you. Then let's move on to the consent agenda, which includes the agenda for tonight, January 10th, 2023. The council minutes from December 13th, 2022. The October check register and financial report, and the appointment confirmation of Tom to the Economic Development, Tourism and Event Commission, and finally, if excusing Councilmember Williams. Are there any items that any member of the council would like to remove from the consent agenda at this time?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Great, thank you.
I'll second.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And here has been.
Councilmember Espinosa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. And the ayes have it and the motion is passed. We have one presentation tonight. Oh goodness. And I'll read a proclamation. One quick moment, let me pull that up. Here we go. Okay, I just needed a mouse, that's what I need. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, proclamation, Office of the City and Mayor, City of College Place. Whereas this month marks the 94th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth, and whereas Dr. King dedicated his life to advancing equality and social justice and challenged all Americans to participate in the never-ending work to build a more perfect union, and whereas Dr. King taught us that we are measured not by where we stand in the moments of comfort and convenience, but by the stands we take during times of challenges and controversy. And whereas Martin Luther King Jr. Day is observed each year on the 3rd Monday in January and is the only federal holiday designated as a national day of service. And whereas each of us can and must contribute to making our communities better with increased opportunity for the whole community. Now, therefore, I, Norma L. Hernandez, Mayor of the City of College Place, do hereby proclaim January 16th, 2023 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the City of College Place, and I encourage all residents to reflect on Dr. King's teachings and seek to put them into action through service in our community. Thank you. Okay, public hearings. We have one public hearing tonight. which is establishing Autumn Meadows Local Improvement District to fund infrastructure improvement. And Ms. Cova will present on that. And just for the record, Councilmember Sherman is going to recuse herself from any discussions and voting
On this topic.
on this topic.
No promises on the other stuff.
All right,
Caldwell.
thank you, Mayor. What's before the court, or, excuse me. It's been a while.
It's been a few weeks.
What's before city council later on the agenda is consideration of forming a local improvement district to fund improvements to the Autumn Meadows infrastructure. The city accepted a petition from the homeowners and the homeowners association to consider taking that over. The city agreed with that. And in order to form the LID, we are required to have a public hearing to take comment from citizens of the city. And that is what needs to be done right now before a decision, we can move on to the decision phase. And I don't think we got any online comments as of the last time I talked to Sherry. I did not receive any comments.
Okay, great. Are there any questions or comments from council members at this time?
Do the map of Autumn Meadows and where it's at.
I believe that there was a map included in the deficiency analysis. But I do have a copy here if you want to see it. It was in the board docs.
Might be one of the. See.
Map of.
There it is.
Should be in there.
So this is,
So while we're looking,
There it is.
here's the map. I'll just give a little summary where it's at. So basically, it's centered around the scenic view and Newgate road areas. And a little bit of summary on this. Newgate and Scenic View are currently publicly owned streets. However, Falbo Drive and the various cul-de-sacs in that subdivision are currently owned by the homeowners association. This gets back to that whole issue we've discussed over the years about how some of the HOAs and developments that were brought in 70s through late 90s. The infrastructure, some of it was put in subpar because at the time, as long as the HOA, it was their problem. In essence, it didn't have to be built to city standard. However, decades later, chickens come home to roost, and now we're at a point where in essence, a lot of that is getting your point of maintenance or replacement. So the code was created by this body roughly 3 or so years ago, where there's an orderly process to unwind it. Because I will say relative to other jurisdictions in the state, it is very uncommon. The amount of subdivisions that have private roads like that. So we had come up with a way to unwind it. I will say HOA, thank you for their patience, because the thing is, there is no direction booklet to deal with this, because a lot of other cities don't have this. So we, in essence, were essentially writing the playbook on how to unwind this. And we do suspect that, I've had outreach conducted, there's quite a few other areas that are now considering this that were put in around the same vintage.
And when the petition was, thank you, Mike. When the petition was submitted to the city, at the time, every homeowner in the subdivision agreed with it. I think there've been 3 homes that have turned over, so there's a majority of them are in agreement.
And if I remember correctly, they're incorporating a little park there on top of the hill too, right? Up towards the, is it 12th Street, I think?
Well, it's a little bit below 12th Street. So that's why if you look at the deficiency analysis a little bit later on, when you see what the amount is to bring it up to standard,
Yeah.
you'll notice the amount we're getting from them's off, and that's because there's a value to get in the park property, because in our comp plan, that section of the community is designated as under parks, so there is a value. So by doing this action, essentially the city will be acquiring the cul-de-sacs, Falbo Drive, the area nearby the creek area, the stormwater, and then that park. And then, with the capital facility plan you all approved, some of the money is, allocated to essentially hire landscape architect or engineer, if you will, to work with the park board to figure out exactly what we're doing with that property. Because there've been some discussions already at the park board level about linking it to Perseverance Park, which is that little parklet up the block.
Yes,
from it.
that's right.
But we need someone who knows what they're doing to figure out how that happens, so.
That's great.
Any other questions or comments? All right, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. And Sherry, no one, or did anyone submit a comment in advance? You said no? No, okay. If there's anyone in virtual attendance that would like to speak, please raise your hand now. If you're by phone, star and I will raise your hand for you. No one? Okay. Any additional discussion? Is there a motion to close the hearing?
I'll motion to close the hearing.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 That means none are opposed. The ayes have it and the hearing is closed. Thank you. Let's move on to the action items. So there's several action items on the agenda tonight. The first item is the hotel feasibility market study, and Mr. Rosatel is gonna share with us on that.
Thank you. Well, this was, previewed to this body during the various meetings in December. Through all of our outreach efforts with the hotel chains, what it boiled down to is, you need to get one of these done first before they will consider your community. So Spotty, authorized us to get a contractor to do that. Came out very favorable, and, Quip's notes is that it recommended that we would be able to support, 2 lodging facilities, roughly 60 to 70 rooms. One of the areas is the Meadowbrook Stone Creek corridor, so either around Walmart or across from the high school. And then the other is immediately above or at the Walla Walla University campus. This study already has traction. There is a hotel chain that actually visited here today and is, very close to getting a deal done. Specifically down in the Walmart corridor. But because we want to be using this for marketing efforts, I think it's important this body pass a resolution that it can be utilized as such, since it will be utilizing that endeavor.
Great. That's good news. All right, look to council members for any questions or comments on this. Mr. Jessup,
Not at the moment, thank you.
Mr. Cleveland,
No question.
Mr. Espinosa.
Yes, Mike, is there a timeline for the actions that the hotel group might be looking at making a decision?
I can allude to it a little bit, but what's happening is they are getting together their investment group right now. And then ultimately the chain then works with them, because this chain is specifically looking at it. They have designated engineers, hotel management operators, the whole thing. And then the investment group agrees to utilize those bodies. I suspect a lot of the admin, finance, development part is going to take spring into summer. They already got bank quotes this morning, so I thought that was relatively good news. And from that, as long as they get the amount of investors to make this thing into reality, I would suspect it would go through the appropriate entitlement phase, so planning and all of that later this year to get to the construction phase going into next year, likely.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman,
No question.
Ms. Boyle.
No question. That's great.
Good. Any additional discussion? If not, is there a motion on this resolution?
I'll motion to adopt resolution number 23-001, which adopts comprehensive hotel feasibility study and authorizes city staff to use it for economic development endeavors.
I'll second.
Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that means there's no nays. The ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you. Next item is the amendment to the engineering agreement for lift station number 5 replacement, and Mr. McAndrews will be presenting on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. As you all may recall, we have an agreement with JUB Engineers to be working on our engineering for our lift station 5 relocation, which is over on Southwest First. This is the lift station that's existing in the sidewalk, kind of a big can sticking out of the sidewalk. So through that process and through coming up with a new location for it, the new site ended up moving further to the east and across the road. We were originally hoping to be able to acquire a piece of property almost directly across the road. So through this process, through the engineering and discussions, we started talking about, well, if we're going to be tearing up this much of the road and impacting the neighborhood, we really ought to consider doing the full package. And so with that, we're working on further grant money with applications with the Department of Ecology and a tentative plan to add sidewalk on the south side of the road, completing basically from the elementary school all the way up to Evans and tying into Whitman, and then addressing stormwater and some existing outfalls that would go into Dones Creek. And so naturally adding additional work also adds additional engineering needs. And so JUB put together an updated cost estimate and amendment to their contract to include engineering for that portion and that additional work. So this would be an amendment to the engineering agreement, which would increase the cost by $73,250, taking the engineering agreement from $290,400 to $363,650. Any questions?
Let's go through council members. Councilmember Jessup.
And a quick 2 questions. I don't know if it matters, but later on, the recommended action says authorizing an additional $85,000 for the contract and information to consider says $73,250.
Yes, so good question. So I added roughly an extra 15% as a contingency on top of what the 73,000 that the agreement was for. So if through the process something comes up and there's a little bit of extra need, I'm asking for an additional 15% approval for an additional 15% now.
Yeah, and then it's 73,250 just for the engineering.
Correct.
It says time and materials.
Yeah, so that's the time in, so the way JUB puts it together, it's authorizing up to, and it's based on time and materials that they use. So it's for engineering, it's typically time, but sometimes there's surveying and other stuff that goes into that. So essentially, if it doesn't cost them that much, they're not going to invoice us for that much. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. That's looking at that, thing, I got to go into the wrong profession. Go back to school. Sorry.
Was that your second question? Did you want to talk about your career choice?
Yeah, I was talking about my career choice.
Mr. Cleveland.
I don't think I have any questions, but I do appreciate you guys looking out to be economical and judicious about when we're doing projects and when it makes sense to potentially do several things at once. So thank you.
Mr. Espinosa.
No questions.
Mr. Peterson.
So this additional amount, Mike, is coming from what fund?
So the additional amount, basically, we're going to ecology for additional funding. And we do have money set aside in both the wastewater and storm that could cover this sort of thing. Because it's within our 6-year extrapolation, the capital facility plan, there were elements of this plan for, it's just, we were gonna do it in different years, so it's basically moving deck chairs around. Cause it makes sense to do it all at once, otherwise you end up with like how Birches at 4th and 6th, where it's just cobblered together still.
Thanks, Mike.
Ms. Sherman,
No question.
Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
All right. Is there a motion on this amendment request?
I'll make a motion to authorize the city administrator to sign a contract amendment for engineering of lift station number 5 replacement, authorizing an additional $85,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that means none of is opposed and the motion is passed. Next is adoption of resolution to consider request to vacate Micaiah, is that how you say it? Micaiah Court, right away at a public hearing. Mr. McAndrews.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So back when Northeast Micaiah Court was constructed, the city, through that whole property acquisition process, ended up with what ultimately amounted to an additional 10 feet of right of way. That wasn't needed to build the road. So currently there's a 10-foot strip of right of way that's sitting there. It's not really useful to the city. The city has to spray it for weeds and take care of it, maintain it, and it's encumbered by a public utility easement. But at this time, the adjacent property owner has filed a petition to have us vacate that right of way, which would essentially allow them more space for their development that they're planning to do. So per the municipal code, before the city can even consider the vacation, the right-of-way vacation, we have to adopt a resolution to consider it and to set a public hearing. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Any questions?
Councilmember Jessup.
I'm sorry, I'm ignorant of where it's at. You said there was something about utilities that were there, but that somebody wanted petition to open it up for development?
So there's an existing, oh, sorry, go ahead. Did I interrupt you?
Oh, please.
There's an existing public utility easement. So that 10-foot strip of right of way is already encumbered by utility easement. So I believe there are existing utilities, and there's the ability for other utility companies to put utilities there. So the property owner that has filed this petition request to vacate, they can't actually really build anything on it. It just gives them more property for setbacks.
Sure. Yeah, no, I get it now. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
Mr. Cleveland.
No questions. It might be nice to see an aerial view when this comes up later, as opposed to just the lot lines.
Absolutely. We can include that when we do the public hearing.
Mr. Espinosa.
No questions.
Mr. Peterson.
No question.
No.
Sorry, I got distracted. Robert, right now, is this property, they're just gonna start constructing on it? Is it an empty lot?
It is an empty lot currently, and I think the property owner has plans to build one, if not two, duplexes on it,
Lexus,
I
okay,
believe.
it's a residential.
They're hoping
okay.
to.
Yeah, all right, Ms. Sherman,
No question.
Ms. Boyle, is
No question. Thanks.
there any additional discussion? Right, see none, is there a motion on this request? Would anybody like to make a motion on this
I'll
request?
make a motion to consider the request to vacate 10 feet of Rakaia Court right of way and adopt resolution number 23-002, setting public hearing for February 14, 2023.
Thank you. There a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, if there's no additional discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that means no one's opposed and the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Our next item on the agenda is the authority for the city administrator to execute the necessary documents to assume ownership of Otter Meadows infrastructure. And Ms. Colwell, you are back up on this discussion.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Okay, this is, goes hand in hand with the formation of the lid for Autumn Meadows. And the mechanics of actually assuming ownership of the infrastructure. It has to go from the HOA to the city. We record the deeds. So what we need from council is a consideration of authorizing Mike to sign the necessary documents to get that transfer.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Jessup, questions or comments? Thank you. Mr. Cleveland,
No question.
Mr. Espinosa,
No questions?
Mr. Peterson,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Sherman, and Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
All right, there's no further discussion. Is there a motion to authorize?
A motion to authorize the city administrator to execute the necessary documents to assume city ownership of Autumn Meadows infrastructure upon formation of the Autumn Meadows Local Improvement District to fund infrastructure improvements.
Thank you. So second,
Second.
all right, any additional discussion? All right, again, Councilmember Sherman is recusing herself, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That means none are opposed and the motion is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, Ms. Colwell will continue presenting on the formation of the Autumn Meadows Local Improvement District.
Yes, and so under the RCWs, there's a process for establishing a LID. And we've already had our public hearing earlier today. To do so, we passed an ordinance establishing the LID, and that's the information that was presented to you in the packet, the draft ordinance. So if anyone has any questions about that, that is what we're asking you to consider today.
Thank you. So the council members, Mr. Jessup,
No, thank you.
Mr. Cleveland,
No question.
Mr. Espinosa,
No questions?
Mr. Peterson,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
All right. Again, Councilmember Sherman is recusing herself. So is there a motion on this ordinance?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 23-001, establishing Autumn Meadows local improvement district to fund improvement to city assumed standards, infrastructure, and directing improvement thereof.
All second.
Perfect. Any additional discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. That means the ayes have it and the motion has passed.
Thank you.
All right, lastly is on the action agenda is a resolution to accept the Transportation Improvement Board UAP grant program. And Mr. Rizzutello is gonna share on
Thank you.
this.
So we did apply for multiple transportation improvement grants. We did get one. This roadway is a good example of the initiative we've had to federally classify everything we can, because then we can get grant money. We've tried to get appropriations for years prior to this getting federally classified. When C Street was redone, we rebuilt dams up until Cargill, but then we ran out of money, so we had to end it right there, but the right of way was all acquired. We actually did pay for full engineering on it, so it's just been hanging out. So this grant, we did get awarded it. It's over 900,000, and it'll fund continuing improvements from Cargill up until Rose Street, including a rapid flashing beacon. So that way folks getting off the bus, it's a safer crossing on Rose Street. And then we can also do some lighting improvements adjacent to Rose Street too, like the pedestrian lighting. We aren't going to be able to do the full corridor of Rose Street because of some arbitrary requirements TIV has with the specific funding program, since they funded reconstruction of Rose Street like 6 years ago with cars, and we didn't opt for lighting at that time, so we're gonna have to do some fancy footwork. But for the remainder of Rose Street, we do believe that will qualify for a complete street grant, and that doesn't have the same restriction. The problem is the CARS project was literally funded in the same program. And if you're coming back later on and add improvements, they have like a 10-year rule, which we haven't hit yet. So we'll do the lighting that we can near Damson, and then the remainder will have to come back later and utilize another grant to wrap it up, so. But Damson will get done finally.
Okay, great. Mr. Jessup, questions or comments? Mr. Cleveland,
No questions?
Mr. Espinosa?
Yeah, great work, Mike. Hopefully that will make more enticing for developers to build that or go after that empty lot on Rose and Damson. There's a lot of potential there for building single family homes. So I think that's a great move strategically looking into the future.
Mr. Peterson?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Sherman?
Mine's a silly question. Is there a reason that there's a resolution 22-049 acceptance of T-Mobile hometown grant also in this, or was that just like a copy paste?
Um,
That was in my phone.
Oh, I didn't see anything. That's perfect.
Sorry.
If it was Mike, that I was hoping it was Mike.
There would have been a problem then.
Yeah, you're fine.
It's not there. It's only on her screen.
Yeah.
You can blame me if you want.
Jeez.
I wanted to make sure because I was listening to, I'm like, is he gonna? No? Okay.
Sherry does only have what we give her to work with. But good catch. It means you're reading the material.
Well, I thought it had,
I didn't catch it earlier today when I was reading if that matters.
I figured it had something to do with what Mike was talking about, the streets, what were you saying?
Complete street.
Complete streets, I thought maybe that was part of that.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
Okay. So at this time, is there a motion on this resolution?
I move to adopt resolution number 23-003, which authorizes city administrator to sign the grant agreement with the State Transportation Improvement Board to accept Urban Arterial Program UAP grant from Northeast Damson Avenue for $943,200.
Great, thank you, Mr. Espinosa. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Mr. Cleveland, any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that means no one is opposed and the motion is passed. Excellent. Okay, administrative reports. We have 3 administrative reports tonight, and Ms. Doran will present the first one on the 2023 salary ordinance update and contract amendments.
Thank you, Mayor. So here, like we are at the beginning of every year, to update the salary ordinance with the cost of living increases that were budgeted for. You've seen all of these in the many budget presentations, but we can go over them again really quickly. The contracted employees, their COLA is contracted based upon the CPIW from September to September, and that came in at 8.5%. The police sergeants mirror the police officers bargaining agreement, so those both came in at 5%. The public employees are at 4%, and the unrepresented employees not covered under a bargaining agreement also are at 4%, and firefighters are bargained at a 4% increase. In 2022, there was a salary study done of comparable cities for unrepresented employees, and there were 4 unrepresented positions that came in under our comparators. So we've budgeted for a salary adjustment for those positions, and they are the fire chief, the finance director, the deputy finance director, HR assistant, and the HR manager. In addition to that, we are removing the mental health co-responder position from the salary ordinance. We were unable to, after 2 recruitments, we were unable to fill that position. So we're going to go ahead and move forward without that. And then attached are also the contract amendments for the contract employees, just to update their COLAs, and then contract amendments for the sergeants to add some incentive pay for bilingual and something else.
Hostage negotiation.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. Anyway, so I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. Otherwise, you'll see that on the consent agenda at the next meeting.
All right. Do we have any questions, Mr. Jessup?
Does that mean that the position for that mental health is just dead in the water?
Yes, yeah, they have to return the grant money.
You gotta return the grant monies?
Yeah, I don't think we got
Yeah.
it.
I'll just add a little bit anecdote on that one. So with the mental health professional, we did multiple recruitments for that, and some of the candidates, backgrounds that came back are not conducive for someone that would be in that position. And we did have a decent candidate, but their educational background wasn't linear, where the degree they currently have wasn't the degree required. However, they were enrolled in a program to get a doctorate, which was that degree, which we thought that's close enough to allow us, and the state said no. So, yeah, so part of this is a workforce issue. Part of it is also, I think the state takes a one-size-fits-all approach, thinking that the labor pool, like what you have on the Interstate 5 corridors out here, and that's the furthest from the case. Tying back to the salary ordinance, I mean, as far as salaries going up, have to, because if you look at the salary study and stuff, even doing this, even catching up the ones that were behind, we're still just getting in the lower end of the middle of the pack. And I just came from an executive alliance meeting today. That's where the heads of all the agencies in the valley meet together, and the governmental ones only. And the scary thing is right now, just with the governmental openings, there's over 70 vacancies. Just, and keep in mind, that was just the folks at the table, which is about half the group. And it's a combination of the housing affordability and just the fact that there's not enough people. If you look at the BLS data for this area, our unemployment is just shy of like 3%, and healthy unemployment's like around 5%. So it's something else.
All right, any employees listening, you forget about everything Mike just said. Did that answer your question, Mr. Jessup?
Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, I did.
Mr. Cleveland?
No questions, although I know that we have a number of positions open at comprehensive we've been trying to fill for months and months and months. So it's not just that.
Yeah. Not at all. Mr. Espinosa?
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Sherman?
No questions.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions.
All right, great, thank you. Next is a draft for pavement rating study, and Mr. Rizzatello will present on that.
Thank you. I just want to get this in front of you all. So this is actually the first ever professional pavement grading study done historically in the community. He did a great job at it, but it wasn't really on a scientific basis. It was really Paul driving around and being like, hey, that needs to be fixed, and going with it. But there really wasn't a rhyme or reason to it. In this case, they have equipment that essentially evaluates the ratings, and they have folks essentially look at each of the corridors and then assign a schedule to it. So this is the first study that actually quantifies it, and it has suggested routes for achieving the optimal pavement rate. And we just ended up receiving this. We're still evaluating it. We decided to share it because Public Works reviewed it and looked at it and said it was accurate. So I want to get in front of you all while we're also taking it to Utilities and Transportation Commission and going through the various advisory bodies on that. But it's good that we finally have something to gauge all of this with.
And there's only 123 pages of it.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to share it early.
Light reading.
Yeah, all makes sense. All right, Mr. Jessup.
Yeah, I've been going through the last couple of days too, like in context, I was interested. In context, where are we in terms of like a typical city in the good fare rate, scheduling, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, right now, we're in the fair, but the deeper you go into a report, it basically says if you don't pick up the funding, it's gonna go down quickly. So
We're short a good chunk.
yeah, and that is because, I mean, we have the gas tax, but we all know with efficient vehicles, that's declining every year. And then even though we have a street fund, the misnomer out there is that money magically goes into that from a source. But the source is actually a redirect from current expense. So that means it's competing against your police, your fire, your community development. So yeah, it's a fund, but in essence, it's a redirect from your current expense fund. So, I mean, we've been doing the best we can now, and with the grants and stuff, we've been doing really good fixing the federally classified roads. I do think this report is a little bit of a canary in the coal mine though, because we're getting close to, I mean, the roads that we could actually federally classify and the feds buying the argument, we're getting near the end of that. I mean, if you look at our jurisdiction compared to any other on the map, the amount of roads we have federally classified is pretty ridiculous, but they've signed off on it, so good.
Well, how much of I'm sure the report may say it on
Yeah.
here, but how much of the very poor, which it seems like, you gotta stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
How much of the very poor falls into that grant classifications or poor or whatever?
It's not the grant classifications. We're at the point where the ones that are in the poor and are declining quickly are those local roads where we cannot federally classify them because it's based on traffic count. So the amount of roads that we can do that to, we're essentially out of. I mean, 8th Street, even that was a stretch.
Yeah.
And the only reason why they bought that, frankly, is because our farmers market's at the end of it. So we were able to say it was like an employment center. But that was essentially it. So a lot of streets you'll see in there that are marked as bad are like Cedar, which we tried to connect with C Street, but again, the traffic counts messed with us on that. So it is an issue. I mean, we're doing okay on the federally classified roads, but if we don't pick it up on the local roads, there will be an issue.
Did whoever evaluates our traffic counts and that type of thing, is that adjusted for COVID or did we time it? I mean, is it very different from COVID, pre-COVID to now? Meaning like, a lot of people stayed home and didn't drive.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, basically, Public Works staff, as time permits, they'll put out our traffic counters to get the traffic counts done. And if there's a roadway we're trying to get funding for, we think we can make an argument for it to be federally classified. We'll typically time, like for instance, around Walmart area, we'll put them all up right around Black Friday and Christmas, so that, well, hey, it's the truth. So that way it's a good count. Around the university, it's when the students are here. So, I mean, we're hitting it at the optimal time, so there is no other gimmick to make the number. We're already getting optimal numbers.
Well, that's
so.
true, that's true usage.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
really
is.
honestly.
It is, I'm just saying, we're getting it where the highest amount of the traffic is going through. So that is the highest number we can get out in the environment.
Does the what the university students did with Councilmember Sherman and getting into the neighborhood counts and that kind of stuff, has that been contributing to?
Yeah.
Like, these are some of these very poor roads. Those types of neighborhoods are involved with like a, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not articulating.
Yeah, it really did help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say. is
It
that
helped us
something-
identify some
Yeah.
street
I don't think that was me, that was Mel.
What'd I say?
Sherman.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
It's all right, I mean, it was good, so I'll take the
Yeah.
credit for it.
Sorry. Yes, so that's contributing and helping with that.
It is, yeah, it definitely is, and I mean, thanks to those efforts, we actually were able to federally classify 8th Street. Cause that was a major feat to get that done, luckily the farmer's market helped in that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it probably wouldn't have been federally classified.
Mr. Cleveland,
No question.
Mr. Espinosa,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson.
So Mike, there's streets and then there's streets, right? I mean, there's like, there's the chip and seal over the top,
Yeah.
right? But then there's also, when we get grant money for this, there's also then the consideration to go deeper, correct, and replace sewer,
That's always what we
water,
did.
because
Yeah.
once you, so there's a superficial adjustments or improvements we can make, correct?
Yeah.
And then I guess that means an improvement or an increase in chip and seal.
Yeah,
I mean,
which I mean, yeah, we've been trying to do that, and that's reflected in this report, because
Yeah.
every year we do have the chip and seal program, and that is out of our real estate excise tax. We've bumped up some from 60 to 75,000, and that does get you additional life. However, at some point, there still is the diminishing returns, because you can keep chip seal and stuff, but your whole base is cracked. Like, for instance, the street I used to live on, Southeast Birch, is a good example, because when I first moved to Southeast Birch, that was chip sealed, and now if you go by where I used to live, there's giant cracks and it's like all falling in.
Yeah.
And that's why, if the base is bad, it doesn't really matter how many times you chip seal, it's still gonna break apart. So we're doing what we can on the roads where it makes sense, but if we don't figure out like the maintenance of how do you replace some of those local roads, then you can put as many chip seal as possible, and it's still gonna break apart and cause bigger issues.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Ms. Sherman,
No question.
Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
All right, then our last administrative report, goodness, is providing temporary emergency Okay, let me start this again. Our last report is providing temporary emergency shelter and enforcing anti-camping ordinances. Sorry, Ms. Colwell.
Thank you, Mayor. This report is to put before you guys a consideration to help support the Sleep Center financially. And this stems from a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case that came out last September that held that ordinances in Grant Pass, Oregon were unconstitutional, cruel and unusual punishment. And basically what the court said is you cannot punish someone or make it a criminal act for them to do something that they have no other choice to do, and that is sleeping somewhere. And so this anti-camping ordinances kind of lump in no trespassing, no sleeping on city parks. The Grant Pass case, they had, you can't use blankets on city parks, things like that. So yeah, they said you could sleep, but you can't have a tent or a shelter or blankets. And so effectively they said you couldn't sleep there. So in College Place, we've adopted the RCW when it comes to trespassing. So if someone is on, let's say, university property doesn't want them there, they can trespass them. The city can enforce that trespass law. We also have an ordinance that prohibits sleeping in a vehicle. So arguably that's a case when maybe someone who's experienced homelessness might be living in their car. And if we were to enforce that ordinance without having a place or an alternative for them to go to, that would be considered cruel and unusual punishment. I haven't had anything come across my desk associated with someone being charged for a crime that you arguably could say is because they're homeless. But I think that is a real possibility in the future. I know anecdotally, we do have homeless people that live in College Place. But I think law enforcement has done a good job as far as enforcing park rules and things like that. But this is kind of a hedge or bet to balance public safety with doing good by our citizens and our visitors. Any questions?
Councilmember Jessup?
Does the school, high school, public considered within that ordinances and that kind of stuff, or is that something separate?
So the laws that occur or that our city enforces is applicable to the school district.
Okay.
Yeah, the school property. So if someone were sleeping in their car there and the school property wanted them off, our law enforcement would respond to that.
And it's in essence, this, I think, another Eighth Amendment case.
Yes.
So in essence, what this does is we would provide financial help for the sleep center to say, we're not breaking the Ninth District Court, Circuit Court's decision. We actually are just putting them into the proper facility, and we're actually funding the proper facility in order to balance what you're saying.
Have that opportunity.
You can't sleep here, it still protects our citizens and so on and so forth, but also doesn't break it by saying you do need to sleep somewhere, go here.
Right, you have a choice. Now you have a
Fund-
choice to either break the law or not break the law.
Right.
You can go to the shelter and not break the law. If they choose to continue to break the law, then we're okay.
But it's
Yep,
just kind of like that.
yep, yeah,
Great.
exactly.
I do know our law enforcement, having the sleep center, supported is a big tool for them to be
Yeah.
able to refer people to. When they do see them or talk to them, and they can give them some services, because they always look to offer them some services of where they
Oh,
can
yeah.
go, what they can need.
Mhm.
So that really helps the homeless person, as well as it gives our law enforcement the tools they need to
Yeah. I need
enforce our laws.
transient population stuff too, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this, I mean, I assume that if city council moves forward with this, I would recommend also doing an announcement that we support this, get the word out there that this is available for people in our community. Yeah.
Mr. Cleveland?
Are there any legal problems with providing a place to sleep that's outside of the city?
I say no. All right then, yeah, I mean, I think we're fine with that. I don't think a court would logistically
Could that affect
say,
like,
we're such a small community, we can't really build a sleep center.
right,
Right.
but like if someone identifies as a citizen of College Place for say like voting purposes,
Mhm.
but we are having them moved and sleeping in an adjacent city?
Sure. So the sleep center is classified as temporary emergency shelter, so that would not, they don't really allow someone there long-term. They work to get them out and to get them into housing. So it wouldn't affect where they live per se. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Espinosa?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Peterson?
Sorry, the funding, what's the basis for the, what's the city's funding of the sleep center? Remind me how that works.
Yeah.
Someone might speak to that.
Yeah, so
Sure, yeah.
it would basically just be an interlocal agreement with the Alliance for the Homeless. Originally, we were gonna do it with the city of Walla Walla, however, just with the turnover and everything else, throwing the end in the mix wasn't really judicious, but Alliance for Homeless, they're open to it. I've talked to Jordan Green, who's the executive director and is College Place resident. And essentially, it's in the budget already. There's an earmark in there for 2,000. Every bit helps, and then also helping with grants and stuff. And there is the opportunity if they wanted to put in for that community grant program as well that's out right now. So yeah, it exists, but there is the 2,000 earmark, and that's in the adopted budget.
And this might, oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, Walla Walla does have a contract with the Sleep Center. And this decision in last September was part of the reason why they continued that agreement. So they could say specifically, we have this for you.
So it's pretty, I mean, it could be obvious or maybe not obvious, but our engagement in the funding of this kind of is shows our participation.
Yeah.
And the fact that somebody that is in College Place now moves to a neutral site or a site that's outside of the city of College Place,
Right.
but we're supporting that. We're not just transferring that individual necessarily.
Correct, and I think that you could almost look at it as we might, chief of police might have come and said, look, we're sending a lot of people here. It would be good for us to support this,
Yeah.
even without the court case.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Well, and I mean, with the court case, the big with the court case, the big concern we have this is basically if, let's say, someone was homeless and they wanted to essentially put a tent on a public sidewalk, a public park or what have you, with that Martin versus Boise case, it says they can do so if you don't have a place via interlocal direct them to.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Sherman,
What happens if the sleep center is full?
Good question.
What was the question?
what happens at the Sleep Center School?
Oh,
It's a good question. They are building a new, have they finished it yet?
They're in the process.
They're in the process of building more. So, I think they're on the right path. I think they are run by really good leadership. And so hopefully that won't happen.
I guess okay, so we
Yeah.
want to go in the hypothetical.
I think that,
There's nowhere to go. then
It
are
would
they
go
still
back and,
arrested?
well,
so what the court said in Grant Pass case, this is the second one to the Boise case. They said they actually did have shelter available, but it was so woefully ineffective or insufficient that it effectively, they didn't have anything. So I think we can trust the Sleep Center and their leadership and what the community needs. And I know they consider College Place as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I do know the Sleep Center where we've toured it. It's very rare that they turn anybody away because they'll find room for them, right? Even if they gotta lay out some cots in their community room or their common room so that they're in a shelter in warmth, they'll do it.
Mayor, where's this location at?
Oh, my goodness, it's over off of
it's off of 13.
13th. It's over
Okay.
like the industrial area.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions.
All right, then that is all our administrative reports. We do not have any informational reports and we do not have an executive session. So we're down to closing. Are there any other items for good of the order? All right, if there's none, do we have a motion to conclude the meeting?
Make a motion to conclude the meeting. Second.
All right, if there's no objections, the meeting is concluded at 7:59 PM. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you to the staff.
Thanks for setting up our new home.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Have a good night.